August the 29th, 2019. As you're looking at the Miami Beach King Tide information, just so happens that this tide is going to come in with Dorian this year, the first one. It says King tides are the highest and most extreme tides of the year. Gravitational forces and the alignment of the sun and the moon cause the tides to change throughout the year. But at this particular time, you're looking at a picture from Miami, guys, from last year. It's called a fair weather flood. You don't have to have any storms or anything. But with Dorian coming in, this is what they're looking at. It says these are the highest predicted tides of the year. During the period, water levels are higher than they are on an average day. In Miami Beach, the king tides usually occur during the months of September and October. Look at this. Based on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's tide prediction, king tides will occur on the following dates this fall: August 29th through September 3rd. See that? The very first one. I think the one in October may be predicted to be somewhat higher, but this one, it couldn't come at a worse time. You're going to possibly have Category 3 storms coming into the east coast of Florida. Now, if it comes into the central, that would be the best part, because you would be on the opposite end of the strongest part of the hurricane. In other words, if you're south of the center, the winds will be pulling out towards the Atlantic, so that may help some. But guys, you look at the latest advisories: 85 miles per hour, 991 millibars, traveling north-northwest at 13 miles an hour. Dorian is just a tropical cyclone, guys, at 35 miles an hour. It's going to move right up into the Nova Scotia area, as we've been talking about. But again, this is 728 update. This is some of the information that's tied in with the hurricane hunters. But they went out about 5. I think they're out there now on another trip. But not much has changed. Some of the timing. But coming in, you notice at 2 a.m. Monday, on the bottom there, as the storm is approaching the shore. That's the worst time. It's at night, just after midnight. But way before that, starting Sunday, the things are going to start to go downhill very quickly. And you can see on this timing chart that between Saturday at 8 p.m. and Sunday at 8 p.m., you're going to have the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. Again, this line, Saturday, 8 p.m., going into night, into Sunday at 8 a.m., you got this overnight period between these two sections right there, guys. That's going to be the most dangerous time for this storm coming into the East Coast. Now, if it curves up into the Florida peninsula and doesn't come into the Gulf of Mexico, then that would be again, the worst timing, because it won't have time to re-strengthen. Here's your wind probabilities going out 5 days up until from August 29th, going out 5 days. In the purple areas, it's a 90% chance that within this period of time, these areas will see tropical storm force winds are higher. And you can see as that goes out you go into 80%, 70% chance, and that covers all the way into the Gulf of Mexico itself. So the entire Florida peninsula, guys, could see some very strong winds coming up during this period of time. So pay attention to that. There's going to be a lot of rainfall with the storm also. Some of the islands, we're talking about 11 inches as it came across the Virgin Islands. Looking at the latest satellite imaging, what we're seeing is that overnight we saw a recycling as it cooled and the cloud tops got a little cooler. Then the storm subsided some, but it didn't really slow down. We just saw a recycling of the storms, and they're now, with the sun back up, they're getting stronger. What they're talking about, the predicted path is to continue north-northwest until it's about parallel with the top of the Bahamas, and then turn across there and come into the peninsula. If you look at this, you can tell again, as the sun's hitting these clouds, that the storm is widening. The clouds are even stronger. Here, looking at the same thing in infrared. Smaller overnight, starting to wrap back up, and this thing could get very large if you look at the last few clips. Again, we have what may be part of the steering current here. It's coming down, and it's kind of the tail end of tropical depression Aaron. And it's really a front that's moving south by southwest. That could affect where the storm comes ashore. Check this out. Notice that movement downward or from north to south. So once it gets right into that area, that may make it turn just a little quicker and maybe come in a little further south in the Florida Peninsula. The further south it comes in, the closer again to your king tide situation in South Florida. So guys, pay attention to that. Again, it's a clear day flood. That's what they call it because it doesn't need a storm. Here are the current models now. It's Cat 1. This was 5 a.m. This was Hurricane Hunter information. 991 millibars pressure dropping. Movement northwest at 13 miles an hour. Again, the 85 mile per hour winds are sustained. You got gusts much higher than that. So we're to Cat 1 now. Today by 2 p.m., notice at the bottom of the chart, they are talking about a Cat 2 by this afternoon. And it looks like it is, we strengthen now. Monday at 2 a.m., coming ashore overnight. Not a good time. They're showing it rapidly decreasing to a Cat 1. Some charts say a Cat 2. But things are changing. We're going to look at the models. And they're going to continue to change each day. But we have to keep an eye on it. Again, Monday night, guys. Really, this is Sunday night. Monday 2 a.m. So coming out of Sunday into Monday overnight, it's going to be rough. Updated at 10:30 a.m. The tracking models. You've got one that turns it north and goes into North Carolina. A lot of these models now are not going into the Gulf of Mexico except for the TABS model. They're coming into Florida, anywhere from south of Miami, which I think is closer, and that's the Navy model because of that front I showed you moving from north to south. So most of them, though, do not enter the Gulf. They turn up into Georgia, coming straight out of Florida. In this area, anywhere in this area is where this thing's going to come in. This is the Navy model. If you look at it closely, it's changed. Still very strong storms that comes right there. That's September 2nd. Guys, you've got to be ready by this point, okay? You have to be ready by the 2nd. That's just a few days out. Then it's going to enter the peninsula of Florida, just south of Lake Okeechobee, according to the Navy model, and then turn northward. Check this out. Comes ashore very strong. Does not quite get into the Gulf of Mexico. It gets two legs out. It gets that westward side of the storm into the Gulf. So everyone in the Panhandle, remember this. You're already going to be getting inundated by rain, but by September 4th, the center of the circulation is wanting to get back out in that warm water, and then it turns north and goes up through Georgia. It's into South Carolina, and it would head out, it would continue north and northeastward, probably going into North Carolina, possibly Virginia. We'll just have to watch it. We know they will change. But again, these models are doing more of a turn. Switching to the Canadian model, basically the same thing, but it doesn't quite go as far ashore. It comes in about the same place. And they are lowering the area where it's coming into Florida, guys. A little further south, I think it's again from that front. But right there, September 2nd, you notice your timestamp, September the 3rd, this thing's kind of stalling out on the coast of the east coast of Florida, on the Atlantic side. And the center of circulation moves right up the east coast, dips in a little right there, and then moves up through Georgia like the Navy model. Check this out. Right up through there. So got Jacksonville, Tallahassee. Keep your eyes on this storm as it moves up. At this point in that model, it's still got a good bit of the storm out in the Atlantic itself, and that's where it will feed additional strength and rain. So it could be a major flooding event up through Georgia and the Carolinas. We've seen it before. This is the global forecast model. Now, September 2nd, setting right offshore, coming ashore by the 3rd. You see where it's at. This model is a little further north, doing the same thing, curving up into Georgia by the 4th. There's your 5th, 6th, as you can see your timestamp, and it comes out through the North Carolina, Virginia area. One other model. This is the European model. And we see the storm come in very powerful, very tightly wrapped, South Florida. Again, guys, watch that king tide situation, especially north of the center. Coming in September 3rd, it's dead center on the peninsula of Florida. September 4th, you see where it's barely moving. It starts moving north by the 5th, and it's on the Florida-Georgia line as far as center circulation, moving right up the coast. By the 7th, it's setting in North Carolina and pulling out from that area. Could be heavy flooding in that area, but let me tell you this, and don't forget it. Each day we've seen these models change. We're still a few days out, and they will continue to change. But you can't let your guard down anywhere along the East Coast right now. We're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.